covering Guyana from coast to coast.
Demerara and Essequibo 99.1 FM.
Berbice 99.5 FM. Kaieteur Radio.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the special edition of Guyana's Oil and You. I am your hostess, senior journalist of Kaieteur News, Kiana Wilburg, and this evening we have with us the Honorable Minister of Natural Resources, Mr. Vickram Bharrat. Sir, welcome to our program, and thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you, Kiana, and I'm happy to be here this evening. Let me say good evening to all listeners, and to say that I am happy to be here to share whatever information I can with the listeners this evening.
Thank you very much, Minister. So we'll jump right into our program tonight, and I know there's so many issues, burning issues, but we'll try to keep them as short as possible and as tight as possible. I'd like to start with Payara, the approval for ExxonMobil's third development project in the Stabroek Block. I know that the government has made it clear that it is going to conduct a review, but there are also some talks about their finishing the review before the end of the month. Minister, could you give us an idea of what is the government's mindset? Is it that the government will ensure that it gets a proper review, and when that is completed, that is what we will go with, whether that is 1 month or 2 months, or is government working with a timeline within which to finish this review?
Thank you again, Kiana. And let me say yes, Payara is the big issue that has been attracting the attention of His Excellency, Dr. Irfaan Ali, and the Ministry of Natural Resources. Now, the topic of oil and gas has been very much ventilated over the last couple of years. Guyanese are anxiously looking forward to this new sector, and I'm sure every single Guyanese would like to know how they will benefit from this sector. I think the ordinary Guyanese, that is the question on their mind. How will I benefit from this sector? I might come on your program, I might go on television, and I might start talking about the Stabroek Block and Payara and the Liza well, and how many billions of barrels of oil can be produced, and all sorts of technical language. But I believe our people out there wants to know whether the government is looking out for their rights, whether the government is doing everything in its power to ensure that Guyanese really benefit from this sector, and how exactly they will benefit. So I will try as best as possible to highlight some of these issues for our listeners. Now, in terms of Payara, we know that Payara is the second discovery by Exxon in the Stabroek Block, as you mentioned, the third
development
project after the Liza phase. Now, Payara discovery has been since 2017. The push now for the license, as we could understand, is as a direct result of what took place in our country for the last 5 months. As you know, there was great political instability in Guyana. Everyone know that. Everyone know what transpired from March 2nd to to August 2nd. That would have played a part in us being in a position now where we are actually working on a tight time frame to ensure that the license is issued to the company, but yet again to ensure that the integrity of the process is not jeopardized in the haste to get that agreement out. So we have to balance it. That is our job, to balance it, to ensure that yes, the investors are satisfied, because we need investors in this sector. We need investors to invest so that money can come into the country. But yet again, we need to ensure that when we sign a contract or we give a license, that benefits are derived so that Guyanese can benefit. Because we know in the past, with the previous contracts, we know these things are in the public domain as to what happened in the past. So we are trying to prevent that from reoccurring, so that we can negotiate to ensure that benefits from this sector will reach every single Guyanese, regardless of which region they are from or which area in Guyana. So that is the reason why you would have heard His Excellency Dr. Irfaan Ali and Vice President Dr. Jagdeo mention that we would like to be satisfied before we go ahead and sign this contract, and that we are engaging an independent consultant to come to Guyana and to do a review of what was done by the Energy Department in keeping with our policies and programs, so the benefits can be derived. Yes, the President would have mentioned that we have engaged the Canadian government through, of course, the High Commission, to get that help, get the technical support, and we are expecting that consultant very soon, in a matter of days, to be in Guyana, so that a review can be done of the existing document prepared by the Department of Energy, and that the government of Guyana, the President, is satisfied with the contract before we actually go ahead and sign it. Of course, there is a time frame. There is a rush to get it done, because, as I mentioned, the 5 months that was lost, and investors have a time frame they are working with too. And in order not to lose that investment, we have to ensure that we work with a strict timeline. But as I can assure you, that working on a strict timeline, there is no way that we intend to compromise the integrity of the license or contract, and we will do everything necessary to ensure that both parties benefit, both parties are satisfied before that license is actually granted, hopefully soon, once the independent consultant would have done a review, and we are satisfied as a government, and His Excellency is satisfied with that.
Thank you for that response, Minister Bharrat. I'd like to just follow up on your comment. So, based on what you've said, at the end of the day, the government's priority is to ensure that even as you work with a time frame, there's going to be no restriction in terms of whether you pursue that process and it would lead to the tampering of the integrity of the review. At the end of the day, the objective is to get as much value as you can for Guyanese, correct?
Exactly. That is what I'm saying. That is why the President made a decision for us to bring in an independent consultant. Even though we are on a strict time frame, he made a decision to bring in that consultant, because we could have easily gone ahead with what's prepared now by the Energy Department and the consultants that are working presently. But he took the decision to bring in that independent consultant so that he is satisfied. He is satisfied that benefits are derived for our country, and the investors at the same time are satisfied too.
Okay. So, on the issue of benefits for Guyanese, I want to turn to another very important topic, our local content policy. Have you had a chance to review this document, and what is the position with it? Will it be dismantled? Has it been reviewed by anyone in your department? Where are we on this matter?
All right. So with regards to local content policy, and for the purpose of our listeners who are listening, because this is a new sector. A lot of people are learning with regards to how the sector operates and what is local content policy. So I just want to say to the listeners, the local content policy speaks to direct benefits for Guyanese. It speaks to jobs for Guyanese. It speaks to for businesses, for local enterprises, local businesses in Guyana can how they can benefit from the oil and gas sector. We know that the oil industry is not an industry that employs a large number of persons. Um, for example, if I may compare it with Gaisuku employ way more workers or persons than the oil industry. It is not a high employment agency, rather it is a high capital agency. So we understand fully that a lot of Guyanese may not be given the opportunity to work directly with the oil and gas sector because of the technical nature of that field too. But what we do know is that there are a number of businesses, what we call the spin-off businesses or the linkage businesses that would evolve in Guyana. These are the supplies industry, the service industries that are linked to the oil and gas sector. And you will find as time goes on, you will see a number of these industries and businesses springing up in Guyana. Now, these are the businesses that will create employment that is also linked to the oil and gas sector. And at the same time, these businesses will be able to access business from the oil and gas sector so that they can carry out their normal activities too. Now, in order for this to occur, it means that the country must have a strong local content framework backed up by legislation, of course. As you mentioned, that there is a local content policy.
Yes.
I've had a chance to look at it. I've had a chance to do some review of it, but I can tell you that what I've seen from that local content policy, it is more slanted. It is more slanted to the investors rather than to the locals. That is the local content policy that was produced over I think, the last 2 or 3 years, or I'm not sure as to the date of when it was finalized, but it was under the previous administration.
Yes, it was finalized earlier this year, Minister.
Yes, so it points more to benefits of the investors and not the locals. So that is something that we need to look at. That is something that we need to change, because local content policy is designed to assist locals. Is designed to assist the businesses in Guyana. Is designed to assist Guyanese with employment in the sector and the spin-off industries. So we need to review that document definitely. The president have already given that instruction, and we have already contacted consultants who who have knowledge and who would have worked on documents before to assist us in drafting a local content framework.
Okay.
That will benefit Guyana and not the investors.
Okay. Minister, just to follow up on that topic as well, one of the provisions in the policy that Kaieteur News would have been at the forefront of reporting on would have been the confidentiality provision. And I'd like to know, as you pursue strengthening, dismantling this policy and making it stronger, how does this provision of confidentiality or secrecy of local content reports sit with you? Because these reports are very important. They will be able to explain to the public or disclose to the public just exactly what these companies have been doing, how many Guyanese they've trained, how many Guyanese they've hired, the transfer of technology, and how many businesses they would have hired within a particular period, and if there's any progression of those achievements. So how does such a provision sit with you, and would it be safe to say that something like this would not exist in the framework that would be going forward?
I'm happy that you asked that question, because if I may go back before I come to the direct question, on the local content policy that we have at hand now, you will find that there is no specifics in that policy.
Correct.
When I say that, I mean there is no specific as to say that, okay, 10% of the workforce will be Guyanese. So much persons will be trained every year to work in the oil and gas sector. 20% of the businesses will go to the local business, whether it's service industry or any other industry, the supplies chain. There is no specifics to that. And I'm sure that is what we need to get down to. I know that we're dealing with, or we're heading towards the question of transparency,
Yes.
in this sector. And I want to say that this particular sector is under heavy scrutiny, as you would expect. This particular sector is the sector that everyone is looking at presently. And the government of Guyana, through His Excellency, President Ali, and through the leader of our party, Dr. Jagdeo, has made it clear on the campaign trail. And it is actually in our manifesto, which will be guiding us over the next 5 years as we implement policies and programs to benefit Guyana. They have made it crystal clear that transparency and accountability must be the order of the day in government, but in particular the oil and gas sector, because this, I believe, is something that was lacking. If you look back at the signing bonus and you look back at the secrecy of some of the, as you mentioned, secrecy of some of the deals and agreements, these are things that we intend to change, because this resource and any resource in Guyana belongs to the people of Guyana. So we believe that it is right that these things are disclosed to everyone, so everyone know what is happening in the sector. Further to that, we believe in, or we will ensure that there is good governance, good oversight of the sector. We have already followed the principles of the Santiago principles along with the EITI. As a matter of fact, the US have pledged more funding to strengthen the area of transparency and monitoring and accountability in this sector. They have been working in partnership with us to ensure that we strengthen this. So this is something that you can do. The people of Guyana can hold us accountable to. And I want to say, as Minister of Natural Resources, that Guyana and Guyanese can hold me accountable with regards to accountability and transparency in the sector. That is something that I'm under oath to do, and I pledge to ensure that within the next 5 years, the oil and gas sector must be a sector that is transparent, and all Guyanese must be au fait as to what is happening in the sector, what are the proceeds from the sector, how much go into the natural resource fund, how the money is used. These are things that people want to know. And these are the information we intend to provide as time goes on.
Okay, Minister. So if I got you there correctly, you are a proponent for ensuring that there are targets to be achieved where local content is concerned. You are in full support of putting targets for companies to say, well, we would like to see you achieve 10% local content or give at least 5% of your contracts to a Guyanese and hire or 10 or 20 or 30% locals for the operations here. And you're also pledging to ensure that there's transparency in the oil and gas sector.
Definitely, definitely. I I can assure Guyanese that I am here to serve and serve in a transparent manner. And yes, with regards to the local content policy, I would prefer that there is specifics with regards to how much business will come to Guyana, how much people will be employed, and as you would realize, and I mentioned earlier, it is a new sector. So we need to work on capacity building. This is something that we'll be engaging our international partners on because we don't have the capacity in Guyana and the resources and maybe the personnel to do so. So this is something that we'll be in the ministry, will be engaging our international partners to develop, if possible, to have a local, not a local, but to have one of the oil and gas university coming to Guyana and offering courses to Guyanese because we may ask in the local content policy and we may demand in our contracts that 10% of the workforce should be Guyanese.
Mm-hmm.
But then the investor may very well say, fine, but we need 10% trained people to work with us. And then that is where we might have an issue because we don't have the technical expertise right now. We don't have the capacity right now in terms of training our human resources to work in that sector. So that is an area that we'll be focusing a lot on because while we're making demands for a percentage of the workforce to be Guyanese, we ought to equip them to work too and to deliver at the same time.
Understood. To go back to the issue of transparency, Minister Bharrat, the industry, as you're well aware, is one which comes with a lot of temptation. What systems would you say the PPP government is going to ensure that it puts in place to ensure the tentacles of oil and gas companies are kept out of the governance structure for the industry?
I like how you put it over, Kiana. Yes, it is in fact the natural resources ministry by large, and more so the oil and gas sector is a very tempting area, and it is susceptible to all sorts of corrupt activities and activities that don't resonate well with the people and result in loss of resources not going to the benefit of all Guyanese. So there are a number of measures that we will take. I'm sure that people would have seen recently, I think in your newspaper, the president would have mentioned that oil and gas and natural resources would be supervised by the office of the president himself. And that is something I personally welcome as Minister of Natural Resources because I don't want to act as, or I will not like to act as a lone ranger.
Or a lone wolf.
Right, or a lone wolf, if I may put it that way. That adds to the accountability transparency issue because it is not one person, it's not the Minister of Natural Resource alone sitting making decisions. It is not the president alone sitting making decisions. The president and the vice president is providing oversight, which is welcome because it will show greater transparency, inclusivity, and greater decision making. That is in terms of our direct arrangement. Added to that, I'm sure you would remember that the Petroleum Commission bill was tabled in Parliament sometime in 2017, if I can recall clearly. That bill was brought to Parliament with a number of flaws, of course, because if you are looking to enhance transparency and accountability in this sector, it means that it must have little or minimum, I may say, political interference, or try to depoliticize the sector. Don't have politicians having total say in the industry, but rather to involve all stakeholders, including civil society, private sector, so that they can make an input into the running of the industry. Because the more people you involve in the oversight of it, the better accountability and transparency you will have. So we had a problem with the Petroleum Commission bill in a sense that it was giving too much powers to the minister. And when it was brought in 2017, I was part of our team that debated against those powers given to the minister. And I stand on the same ground today. Being on the other side as Minister of Natural Resources, I will still debate against it, because I believe oversight must come from stakeholders and not the minister dictating what happens in the Petroleum Commission. But it is something that we'll have to look at, because the Petroleum Commission bill was sent based on our insistence at that time, sent to a special select committee. And I'm not sure if that special select committee ever met or what happened. Then we went into the no confidence motion, and then after that, everyone know what played out. Yes. So that bill is still sitting. In Parliament at a special select committee. Hopefully Parliament will reconvene very soon. I know we're dealing with this pandemic and it's very serious. If I may take the time to wish my colleague, Foreign Affairs Minister Utod, I hope that he get well soon. And I hope that my other colleagues are safe and all Guyanese are safe. It is no secret that the entire cabinet, the president himself, vice president, prime minister, and all ministers did the test yesterday. We should receive the results tonight. We're praying that everything will be okay. So, barring that, we're hoping that Parliament can be reconvened very soon. Parliament has not met, I would say, since the 24th of December 2018. Parliament has not met fully, even though I think there were two sittings sometime in 2018 with the government alone, because we did not attend after the no confidence motion. And I think everyone knows the circumstances as to why we did not attend Parliament in 2019.
Yes.
So as soon as Parliament is reconvened, we will ensure that we look at the Petroleum Commission bill and ways in which we can strengthen that bill, so that we have a commission that is not political. We have a commission that has the interest at heart, the sector at heart, and that we can get proper accountability and transparency through the working of this commission.
Thank you very much for that response, Minister. On that note, we are going to go through a quick commercial break, and when we return, we will continue our discussion with the Honorable Minister of Natural Resources, Mr. Vickram Bharrat.
COVID-19 tips sponsored by Dex Soap. 1. Practice social distancing. 2. Wear your mask when leaving the house. 3. Wash your hands regularly for 20 seconds using our Dex Soap. 4. Cover your nose and mouth with a disposable tissue or flex elbow when you cough or sneeze. Choose Dex Soap for that extra cleanliness. Dex Soap is affordable and available nationwide.
tropical delight, the flavor tasting right, pure taste and pure delight. Orange apple cranberry, fruit punch mango, yes sir, high in energy. Jumping up every day, and I jumping up every night. I think it's back and it's pure taste, pure delight. Energy to unload, behind a truck down the road, the taste going to explode. Tropical delight, tropical delight, pure taste and pure delight.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. If you are now joining us, I am your hostess, senior journalist of Kaieteur News, and tonight on the special edition of Guyana's Oil and You, we have joining us Minister of Natural Resources, Mr. Vickram Bharrat, and for the first part of our program, we would have touched on issues that relate to the approval of the Payara Development Project. We would have touched on local content policy, and we would have also touched a bit on the importance of ensuring transparency and accountability are the overarching principles of the oil and gas sector. So for the concluding part of our program, Minister Bharrat, I'd like to take your attention to the gas to power plan, one of the most important issues for development in Guyana, or one of the most important challenges that we've been talking about, is the very high cost of power, electricity, and with the oil and gas discoveries, there's been a lot of talk about bringing some of that gas to shore. What has been the assessment of the government thus far where this is concerned, and what is going to be the way forward?
All right, with regards to gas to energy, Kiana, and to our listeners, this is definitely a big problem in Guyana, as you would have highlighted. The cost for generating power. Guyana would have lost a lot over the years because we couldn't find a more effective and cheaper way of generating power. You would recall that when we were in government, that is the People's Progressive Party, we would have started some work on the Amila Falls Hydro project. Now, that project was aimed towards producing more reliable, efficient, and cheaper power. Now, when I say power, I know mostly people sitting in their private homes are listening to us tonight. But when I say power, I also mean power for the manufacturing industrial sector too. Because, for example, an investor would like to come and invest in South America or in the Caribbean. The first thing they look at is which country they can maximize or they can gain more profits from. And when they look at Guyana, the first stumbling block is the cost of power. So instead of investors coming to Guyana, they choose to go to other countries where there's a cheaper generation of power, maybe Trinidad, maybe Barbados, maybe Suriname. These countries produce power way cheaper than Guyana. So that was the concept in which the Amila Falls hydro project was aborted. And we still are working towards that to ensure that Guyanese have more reliable and cheaper power. Even at a residential level, we know people dread the GPL bills. That is the hardest time of the month. You don't want the bills to come because there's always some kind of surprise in it, and we know the affordability, and we know that in some cases most of people earnings go towards paying bills in Guyana. So with that in mind, we had crafted in our manifesto plans to ensure that we provide cheaper power, or power at a lower cost, for households and also for manufacturing industries. Because we need in Guyana investors to come. We need investors, we need manufacturing companies. We need these companies to come to Guyana, because when these companies come to Guyana, they bring foreign currency, which is what we need. And that is one reason why our dollar has not been stable for the longest while, because we are not getting enough foreign currency into the country through exports or through investments. So when investors come to your country, they bring foreign currency, they create jobs for the locals, they pay taxes to the government, and of course they provide cheap goods and services, because a company come to Guyana producing a product, obviously it would sell cheaper than if we got to import it from another country. So there are so many benefits when investors come to our country. So in order to attract investors, we must craft a plan to provide cheap electricity, because we have land, we have all the other resources except that. So our government, through His Excellency Dr. Ali and Vice President Dr. Jagdeo, has been engaging a number of stakeholders, along with myself, has been engaging a number of stakeholders, a number of investors, and the present companies that are operating to look at the possibility. In fact, we are moving from possibilities now to see how early we can implement the gas to energy project. Now, the gas to energy project basically means putting the infrastructure in place, and if I may go speak as a layman here, actually running the pipelines from the wells in the Atlantic to the shores of Guyana. Gas is not something that we can send a ship out there with a tanker or so and load that gas into the tanker and bring it to shore. It doesn't operate like that, like crude oil. Gas is something that you need to send through a pipeline from the wells out there straight to shore. So you would understand that it is a big investment. So we are trying to get investors to buy into the idea of doing it. Initially, the companies were not for it. Initially, the companies were not for it, but that was a while back. That was a few years back when there weren't so many discoveries as yet, and we didn't realize that we had so much oil and gas out there. Because as you know, the companies would use some amount of gas to pump back into the well so that they can get out at least, if not all, most of the fossil from the well, right? In some countries where there is no gas, what they will do is use water, but water is not effective as the gas. So they had indicated initially that they would use the gas for that. Also to run the rig and the operations out there, they use that gas too, and then the flaring and all that. So because of the number of discovery over the last few years, and having determining that there is a large amount of gas there, investors and these companies are now willing to partner with us to bring that gas to shore so that we can convert it to energy and have a more reliable and, of course, cheaper power generation for household and for commercial purposes. So that is basically what the gas to energy project is about. I can tell you that last week, and it seems as though the government has been in power for maybe months now, but it's only a few days. Sometime last week, the president himself, the vice president, and myself met with some of these companies, and we held discussion. We started discussion on this project. The companies are willing to work with us to implement this project. So I want to say safely that yes, we are working on this, and it will be a realization. I'm sure the president will make an announcement when the contract is actually finalized, and we have a time frame and everything as to when it will be realized, and as to how early Guyanese will start benefiting from this. Because as you know it, GPL has its problem, and we need to find alternatives.
Thank you very much, Minister Bharrat. I'd like to take your attention to another big issue for your government, which is the Natural Resource Fund. The PPP would have been extremely critical of the legislation that would have been passed in January. That would have been after the no confidence motion was passed in December. And I was interested in hearing from you as to whether the monies that would have been deposited into the Natural Resource Fund account that is held in New York, if is it that that money would remain untouched until legislation is improved? Because I know the PPP would have said that it's on the agenda to strengthen or dismantle those parts of the legislation that are deemed to have too much political influence. So what is going to be the state of affairs where this is concerned? Will the money remain untouched until the legislation is improved?
I'm happy that you asked that question, Kiana. Actually, the Natural Resource Fund, we would know it, or people would know it normally as the Sovereign Wealth Fund.
Mm-hmm.
In most countries, that is what they call it. In Guyana, it was tabled as the Natural Resource Fund. Now, the Sovereign Wealth Fund or Natural Resource Fund, if I may call it that, basically speaks to savings from this sector. It speaks to ensuring that future generation benefits from the proceeds of oil and gas. As we know it, oil and gas don't last forever. If you look at countries like Dubai, the main reason why Dubai is what it is today is because they would have realized that oil don't last forever. So they, having realized that, they started to plan early. And today, Dubai is probably making more money on tourism and investment coming into the country than oil. So basically, we need to plan for life after oil. So in a nutshell, that is where the Sovereign Wealth Fund will come in. It basically speaks to proceeds from the oil and gas sector going into this special fund and not the consolidated fund, but it goes into this special fund. And of course, through legislative framework, it is determined how much of this goes to the consolidated fund, how much of that remain there, how many is spent on special projects, and basically that is how it is structured. But it is designed to save money, if I may put it that way, for future generation or for life after oil. And if you look at Norway, Norway has probably the best model.
Yes.
In fact, they are very wealthy. If you look at the amount of money that they're holding in the Sovereign Wealth Fund, I think they have the highest amount in the world right now. So we maybe have to look at their model and to model our system similar to that, because they're very successful when it comes to that. With regards directly to the Natural Resources Fund, as I would have mentioned, we were not in Parliament after the no confidence motion, and we believe that the government at that time, the caretaker government at that time, hastily, because this is a very important, that they would have took that bill to Parliament and passed it in a few hours. I have had a chance to look through some aspect of that legislative bill, and it speaks to a public accountability oversight committee. Now, this is the very government that would have tabled a bill for the Petroleum Commission as well too. So you will find that there are overlapping responsibilities there. And then you will find too that the Public Accountability Oversight Committee was never established, even though that bill was passed in Parliament in, I think, May 2018. So that is something that we will definitely have to look back at in the near future. And to answer the direct question as to the funds in it, I want to say that is a decision that the Cabinet, with His Excellency, will make, because it is more of a policy decision rather than a decision that I can make or I can comment on now directly. But I'm sure at a Cabinet level, we will take that policy decision, whether we will move ahead with utilizing the resources or whether we will work on strengthening the Natural Resource Fund. so that there is more transparency and accountability, because that is what we stand for. That is what the people would have put their confidence in us on March 2nd for, and that is what we intend to deliver, Kiana.
Thank you very much for your responses, Minister. I'd like to wrap up our program this evening with your concluding thoughts on what can be expected from you in the management of the day-to-day operations of the oil and gas sector, and can Guyanese look forward to seeing that your hands will be clean in doing all of this?
I want to assure all Guyanese, Kiana, regardless, and when I say all Guyanese, and when I speak about benefits going to all Guyanese, I want to assure every single Guyanese, regardless of political affiliation, regardless of class, ethnicity, wherever you're from, in terms of our region, I want to say that when our government speak about benefits to all Guyanese and being accountable to all Guyanese, we mean every single Guyanese, regardless whether you voted for the People's Progressive Party or not. The elections are over. We are ready to govern and take this country forward for everyone, because Guyana belongs to everyone. We have to find common grounds to ensure that we can work together, putting aside political differences and whatever differences we may have. We are willing to work with anyone to ensure that this sector is run in a very transparent manner, and that we are held accountable to the people of Guyana. Because in 2025, we will be going back to the polls. And when we go back to the polls, we will go on that platform. And of course, we don't want to campaign on what happened from 2015 to 2025. But we would like to go on that platform and to say to the people of this country what we would have done from 2020 to 2025. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. It was a pleasure having you on the program this evening, and we hope that we can have you back again for more insightful discussions on the transparent and accountable governance and running of Guyana's oil and gas industry. Once again, Minister, thank you very much. Do have a good evening. And to our listeners, wherever you are, those joining us on Facebook Live, thank you for being part of tonight's discussion, and we hope to have you back with us next week, Thursday, same time.
Thank you, and good night.
Good night.